10 or just go?
I think we should get started. Everyone won't be able to see me, but I'll be talking. My name is Stephanie Eisenberg. I work for the Lake County Health Department. And I'm partnering with Officer Hyndman, who's doing the presentation tonight. And we want to thank you for joining us. We are recording, so those that weren't able to make it can join at a later time or watch and learn the valuable information that Officer Hyndman is sharing. And if you could share your email in the chat, we will be sending a follow-up email with all the resources that we talk about today, so you can have those as well.
Okay. I'm going to talk to the people that are here. Yeah. Hi, people in virtual land. I don't mean to ignore you, but I can't be like facing everywhere all the time. So yes, again, I'm Amy Hyndman. I'm with the City of Highland Park Police Department, and I am specifically assigned to our school district 112 K through 8. So I work for all the buildings. When issues arise, I get called to all the schools. Predominantly my role is at Northwood and Edgewood. That's where I stay most of the days, and then I'll go to the other schools if needed. So like Stephanie said, we're partnering together to just kind of get some awareness out about underage drinking and what parents can do for some preventative measures. And so I always want to start with the data. So what do we know about underage drinking trends? The Monitoring the Future survey is a survey put out by the University of Michigan for the last bunch of years, since 1975. I'm not doing that math. And it's a national survey. They usually talk to about 40,000 kids over 400 schools. It depends. And they're talking to 8th graders, 10th graders, 12th graders. And in this specific slide, it's talking about when we look at prevention, we try to look at the 30-day use. How often are kids using on a regular basis? And so when we looked at the national data for Monitoring the Future, we see that in 2020, the 8th graders reported about 9.9% usage of alcohol on a regular basis. The 10th graders were 20%, and then the 12th graders were, 34%. Fortunately, the one good thing that came out of the pandemic is that we did see a major decline in alcohol drinking and actually substance use across the board, nationally and locally for kids, probably because access wasn't there. They weren't socializing. They weren't given the information or the opportunity. So you can see over there, 2021 data is a lot less. That's a significant drop when we look at the world of prevention. So it's a win-win for the pandemic, as much as it's been horrible. And then when we look at our local data, this district participates in the Illinois Youth Survey. It is a survey that goes across many schools in our state, and Stephanie actually puts that on for the district. And when we look at the data, the most complete data that we have is the latest is 2018. So when we look at that data, the 8th graders are approximately the same nationally, very similar, 11%. The 10th graders are at 26%, and then the 12th graders really jump up there at 59%. So it's a lot higher than the national data. And we've noticed actually when we look at the Illinois Youth Survey data that this area does have a higher percentage of kids participating in drinking alcohol. Not quite sure why, but that is the data. So you can see that there's a concern, especially if you guys have high schoolers or if as your middle schooler is going into high school. Prevention is a key now. Let's get to them now so that we can maybe bring that senior number back down a little bit and get the kids to recognize that it's not good for their health, etc. And how do we do that? Prevention, you are their number one prevention. Parents are definitely the number one reason that kids say they do not drink. It's about having these conversations where you're talking early, talking often, talking honestly. The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends actually talking to kids as early as age 9. And I know that sounds daunting to a parent of, it's like a 4th grader, maybe a 3rd grader. But especially in today's world with exposure to so many different things, they are seeing it earlier and earlier with social media. You got celebrities that talk about it. So your pediatrician may be asking your child at age 9 about their use or knowledge at age appropriate levels of alcohol. So I think that's a great thing. And you should be encouraging that conversation at home as well. We know that through research, kids are making up their mind about underage drinking as early as 9 in these formative years here in middle school. So if they're seeing favorable viewpoints, if they're seeing favorable stuff on social media or on TV, we know that they're more likely to drink because they see it as favorable. And then just recognizing, again, you are their number one. More than 80% of kids aged 10 to 18 say their parents are their number one influence when they make that choice if they're going to drink or not. So if you are setting those expectations up at home and being very clear that you don't believe in underage drinking, you won't accept it, kids are going to listen. They really do. And I think that parents underestimate how much kids are listening to you. And we talk to our kids about everything. How was your day at school? Tell me about that. And yet sometimes we get that nervous, oh my God, I have to talk to them about alcohol. Like, you've practiced these conversations. You've done it before for everything, every part of their life. If you're setting those habits early on when the children are young, it's just a continuation and it's just another topic. So you're doing it just like you would for anything else that's going on. We want to talk with them, not at them, right? That's one of the big messages I think that parents have to recognize. As kids are getting older, they are growing into themselves, so they are wanting their own opinions, and they want their opinions to matter, and you have to acknowledge their opinion, and that's going to definitely make them listen a little bit more. Using headlines or movie or social media topics. You're watching a movie together and there's an underage drinking party, or kids that in the movie or show are underage and they're drinking, and that can be a conversation starter. Hey, what do you think about that? What do you know about alcohol? It can be simple as that, and they answer and you're like, okay, and that's it. But it doesn't have to be this long drawn out conversation. It could be a quick thing. And then the next week, when you guys are driving somewhere to a soccer practice or something, be like, we were watching that TV show and we talked about alcohol. Can you tell me more about that? I love that phrase, guys. I just went to a forensic interviewing course. And if anything, I learned that is like the number one phrase for parents. You should all memorize this phrase. Tell me more. Tell me more about what happened. You're giving them the opportunity to talk. You're not putting any information into their brain. It gets a very unbiased view of what's going on or what occurrence of events. Tell me more. So remember, that's my tip for today for sure. Use that expression. It's kind of hard to see that tip for talking with teens sheet. I will say that we are going to provide all of these kind of fact sheets to everybody. But one of the things I wanted to, I'm just going to move this window. Just realize that's out of the way. A couple of these phrases I want to give. So, and even here it says, that's helpful. Tell me more. Tell me more about what you think about that. And that could be, Johnny comes home from school and says, oh, I think this girl's really cute. Oh, tell me more about Sarah. So you're just going to get information from him, and it's his perspective. It's his point of view. You're not tainting the information. And so you're going to learn a lot more about what your kid's doing. So practice now when they're little. I'm having a hard time seeing these two. Can you be more specific? Would you like to share more about that? Like, these are the kind of phrases, if you practice them even now when their kids are little, it's just going to become more natural as they're older to talk about these more serious things. Remember, keeping away from closed-ended questions. Closed-ended questions are when you only expect like a yes or no answer at the end. Are you going to the party with Steven? Yes or no? No. Tell me about the party with Steven. They're going to have to say, well, it's at Steven's house. His parents are going to be home. They'll just start spewing out information. But if you just say, are you going to a party with Steven? They're going to be, yeah. And that's it. So really work on no open-ended or no closed-ended questions. Keep it very open. Tell me about the party at Stevens, etc. Be actively present, avoid lecturing. Again, that goes back to the teens want their opinion to be heard. So this is a no judgment zone when you're talking about these topics, drinking, any other substance use. Just tell me what you know about it, except for the fact that you are laying down those expectations of what your family values are, right? We're going to talk about that in a little bit. I liked how they put on here, only offer advice if they ask for it. I think that's a big thing for parents. We want to fix things for kids. We want to make their lives so easy. But if they're just telling you about a problem, just be like, yeah, that sounds really tough. I'm sorry that you're going through that. Don't try to fix it for them. Unless they're asking you for that answer, go for it. And then really remember, guys, it's to talk often. short conversations. So that's the 60 1-minute conversations about these kind of topics versus the 1 60-minute conversation. That is where kids are going to tune out. And you need the repetitive. There we go. So again, when I was talking about just now, I said about establishing your family rules and your family values. Make it very clear from the get-go that you don't agree with underage drinking, that this is not something that we participate in. Mom and dad are not going to agree with you, but make sure that they know that you're there for them if something happens. Reinforcing the school curriculum. You can find out what they're talking about at school through their health teacher. That's usually when they talk about the drug units is in health class. So email their health teacher. Hey, have you guys talked about this? When are you talking about A, B, or C? And they'll tell you, and then you can start that, be a conversation starter. I heard you guys were talking about underage drinking at school last week, last month. It could have been in the fall if you're just finding out about this now. You know, Mom and Dad, we just want you to know that we also don't approve of underage drinking, and this is why we want you to be healthy, etc. So it's I think that's a wonderful way to kind of start that conversation with kids, because it's where they're home, like they're always at school. That's where they feel comfortable. Hopefully they like their teachers, but I think that's a great way. We will provide to the virtual people these fact sheets. This is from Community Anti-Drugs, our local anti-drug coalition that puts out a lot of great information. So get the fact sheet and start there. Start going through why is underage drinking not okay? Why do we not want you to drink alcohol as a middle schooler, as a high schooler? And it's because of these reasons. And then you can go through that. What do you think about that? What do you think about your future? I think it's a great way to segue into these conversations. As you are talking to their health teachers, and just so you guys know, I do go into health classes on a regular basis, and I give a presentation. And so I thought it might be interesting for you guys to see what I play for the kids. And so I'm going to play this video. It's all about the brain development and how alcohol affects it, and then we'll move on.
Adolescence is the transition from childhood to adulthood, encompassing a period of major physical, emotional, intellectual, and social change.
They can hear it?
Our
Okay.
brains also change considerably during this time. The developing brain is a learning machine, and from when we're born, it grows enormously as we learn more and more about the world. For faster communication across the brain, a process called myelination. Pruning and myelination occur gradually over the teenage years and are greatly influenced by our experiences and interactions with the outside world, including the alcohol and drugs we choose to take. Let's take a closer look inside the brain. The frontal lobes take the longest to develop. By about 25, they become your centre for decision making, helping you to plan and organise, focus your attention, control your mood and behaviour, and solve day-to-day problems. The temporal lobes are like an information processing centre that builds your library for sounds, speech, learning, and memories. The cerebellum integrates your senses, helping you to balance, control, and fine-tune your movements. The hypothalamus is involved in many functions, including the release of hormones that help regulate your temperature, hunger, thirst, and sexual development. And the brainstem is like the final checkpoint for information going to the body from the brain, and vice versa. Alcohol affects the teenage brain differently to the adult brain because it's still developing and not all areas are fully operational. How you feel when you drink alcohol can be an indication of the damage it's doing to different areas in your brain. Alcohol affects the frontal lobes first, making you feel relaxed and reducing your inhibitions. This means you may talk more freely, act loud or rowdy, or do foolish things you later regret. As you continue drinking, your brain starts slowing down, reducing your ability to concentrate, make good decisions, and control your emotions and impulses. This means you might do things you otherwise wouldn't. In the hypothalamus, alcohol blocks the hormone that tells the kidneys to reabsorb water. This means more water is lost as waste. Reducing the amount of water available to the brain makes you dehydrated, which explains the headaches and body aches you may experience the next day, otherwise known as a hangover. Alcohol's effect on your cerebellum is evident when you lose your balance and fall over, or have difficulties with standing and walking. This is why injuries are so common when people are intoxicated. Drinking alcohol particularly affects a part of the temporal lobe called the hippocampus, which enables us to form new memories. Alcohol interferes with the transfer of information from short-term memory to long-term memory. So if you drink heavily over a short period, you may experience a blackout, meaning the next day you can't remember what you said or did. Drinking at a level that causes blackouts means you're also much more likely to do something you wouldn't usually do, and your friends may not be aware of how drunk you really are. During your teenage years, you need to look after your brain to keep it healthy, just like other parts of your body. Our scientists are learning more about the brain all the time, and research has shown that the damage alcohol does to the developing brain is not only short-term, but maybe permanent. Look after your brain. It's the only one you've got.
That's my favorite catchphrase. Look after your brain, it's the only one you got. So I feel free to say that. I say that to a lot of kids and they're like, oh, Officer Hyndman, whatever, we'll look after your brain. But definitely say that at home, like tell them, remind them. But I think that's a really good video to, we're going to provide that in the resources as well. So you'll have that video if you want to sit down and play it with your kids and just recognize that it's a great way to point out, this is why alcohol is bad for you. It's affecting all these different parts of your brain. It explains why people act the way that they do when they're drinking. Because I think sometimes kids don't recognize, for instance, drunk driving, it's a direct correlation to the fact that their brain is affected and they're not making good choices and their inhibitions are lowered. I think that's a really good thing to talk to about kids, that recognize, so that they know that they may do things that they wouldn't normally do when they're sober, when they start drinking, because of that whole lowering your inhibitions concept. A lot of times when I bring that up in health classes, the kids don't even know what that means, that lowering your inhibition. So I think it's a good conversation thing to have with kids. But it's a great video just to kind of talk about the brain development. So this is why it's harmful for you. It's affecting how your brain is controlling your body. And then the other thing I talked to you about kids is, and I think it's important that parents talk to kids about this, is this concept of binge drinking. Research does show that the majority of kids are not drinking, but when we look at the kids that do drink, they often are reporting binge drinking. So that's a concern. It's very scary. I think we've all probably heard those cases down in colleges and even probably high schools. Nothing here locally the past years that I'm aware of, but definitely in college campuses where frat boys have died because there was a competition. Let's see how much you can drink, and they're being hazed and drink more, drink more, drink more. But we need to teach our kids that that's not even something that your body can withstand, that your bodies are not meant to just take in unlimited alcohol. So I think talking about what binge drinking is, and then how is alcohol processed in the body. Or also, the picture up there just talks about the different types of alcohol, recognizing so that kids have an honest understanding that not all alcohol is the same, right? It's not all, you can't have the same volumes of different types of drinks. Wine is more alcoholic than beer, so that kids have that understanding if they are at a place where someone's offering them something to drink, that they know what they're putting into their bodies, and the fact that if they're putting too much of something in their body, they could get sick, they could black out. One of the things I think it's really important to have that honest conversation with kids, that if they do find themselves in a situation where they are drinking a lot, that they could be assaulted, they could be sexually assaulted, they could be physically assaulted. And when kids are victims of this kind of crime, wake up the next day and have no memory of what happened, that's a really hard thing for them to deal with as victims, that you're victimized, you had no control, and then you just can't even remember to help yourself and talk to the police about it. That's, I think, something that's important that kids understand, that when they're doing that binge drinking and blacking out, it could lead to some really scary stuff. Okay, so this is a really short video. I laugh because this is a very silly, reminds me of like the videos from the 70s. But to me, it's the perfect little video that really explains how alcohol is processed in our bodies. And I think it's fun for kids to, you can watch it and then explain it with kids.
When you drink, alcohol is absorbed straight into the bloodstream through the stomach and the walls of the small intestine. If you have food in your stomach, the alcohol may take a little longer to be absorbed, but once it's in your system, there are only a few ways the body can get rid of it. A little goes up through the kidneys and the urine. A little may be sweated out. And some is breathed out through the lungs, which is the reason the breathalyzer works. But most of it, over 90%, must be got rid of through your liver, which breaks it down and burns it up. If you've got healthy liver, it will only get rid of the alcohol contained in about one normal-sized drink per hour. That means 1 glass of beer, 1 small glass of wine, or 1 nip of spirits per hour. It can't work any faster. Nothing will speed it up. So when you drink faster than about 1 glass per hour, alcohol accumulates in your system, pushing your blood alcohol level higher and higher. This blood alcohol level is expressed as a figure, a percentage, 0.05%, 0.08%, 0.10%, and so on. This figure indicates the percentage of alcohol in your blood. Because your liver can only get rid of alcohol at a fixed rate, after a heavy night's drinking, your blood alcohol level may still be over the legal limit for driving the next morning. Coffee, cold showers are no help. They may wake you up and create the illusion of sobriety, but they have no effect on your blood alcohol level. The only way to get sober is to give your liver the time to break down the alcohol in your system.
I like these little videos from Australia. All right, so it's a conversation age appropriate that you can have with kids about, so they understand what's happening in their body, that there is a fine, it's not like they can have unlimited amounts of alcohol and they just sleep it off, right? I think kids need to understand that there's a biological, physiological way that our bodies get rid of alcohol, and it's a process that you only get rid of 1 drink an hour. So if they get stuck in a situation where they are drinking a lot of drinks, that they know that they could die, that anybody could die if they continue to drink alcohol faster than the way the body can remove it. And just understanding that they know what types of alcohol how the different types of alcohol can make that process faster, that they can get more drunk depending on what they're drinking. I think it's these kids that go to these events and have these hazing situations where they're told to drink again and again. They might not have that knowledge and understand that they're not just going to sleep it off, right? That they're not just going to go to bed and wake up the next day, because not all kids do. We talked about the binge drinking. So again, it's about these conversation starters. You are their number one. This is another one of the handouts from CTAD that is a lot of good information about, so your child is talking about wanting to go to a party. What do you do, right? What information are you getting from them? So I think these are great ways to talk about it. 5 W questions. Where are you going? What will you be doing? Who are you with? When will you be home? Will there be alcohol? And you can based on however they answer them, you can say, all right, tell me more about that. What do you know about that? And get some more information from them. I think having a code word for kids is really important because I think sometimes kids are put in a peer pressure situation where they don't want to drink. They know your family values. They are following that. They have no desire to break those rules. But now they're in a situation where they don't want to look like the weak one that's not participating. So they can call you. They can text you to call them. Mom, call me right now. And then when you do, you can be like, oh, for instance, I gave the example of popcorn. Oh, and say this is your kid that's driving. I know that middle school, this is middle schoolers, but just say your kid's driving. Oh, you want me to stop and get popcorn later? That's okay, I'll do that for you. So then they know that they're in a tricky situation. Whatever the word is, you can come up with these kind of phrases. If you're calling your middle schooler and they're not driving and you're having a conversation, and then that could be very well, it could be their answer to you. Mom, I feel like having some popcorn tonight later when we get home. Do you have some at home, or do we need to stop and get some on the way home? Mom and dad will know that they need to come get them right away. They want them picked up. They're in a tricky situation and they don't want to be there anymore. So have a family talk about that. Have your code word, whatever it may be, whatever's your vernacular, whatever you talk about, have that be your word. When you guys get this handout, it's got some really good information on how to talk to your kids. A lot of the stuff I did put on the previous screen about talking with your team and not at them. And then, you know, maybe you're at the point where you think your child might be drinking. What do you do now? The signs to look for, shifts in mood or personality. I think we question as parents, oh, they're just 13, they're just getting into that moody phase, they're changing on a regular basis anyways. But I think if you look at a combination of changes, mood, personality, behavior, grooming and hygiene is really big when we notice kids are starting to use substances because their lack of motivation just kind of really goes out the window and they just don't care. So they don't care if they're smelly. They don't care if they're wearing dirty clothes. They just sometimes bring on that kind of appearance. And then also just the odors of if they're smoking or drinking, you're gonna smell those substances on their clothing. Understand, they're looking at their physical health. How are they doing with sleep, that kind of stuff. Oh, those are kind of the signs to look for. And if it's all those things have changed, then maybe a trip to your pediatrician is in order. Talk to somebody about that. And then remember, use your senses. It's not about letting the kid just come home and run to their room, right? If you know that your kid's gone to that party, you asked the 5 W questions and you got it all documented, and they're coming home now, you need to set that rule early that this is our family rule that when you come home, you need to come check in with me. Even if I'm sleeping, you need to come and wake me up and you're checking in with me. And then you're going to use your senses, right? We're going to smell it. It's very interesting as a police officer. I think my senses became definitely more attuned to substance use with DUI patrol that I used to do. Because I don't recall as a non-police officer ever being like, oh, they're drinking. Oh, that person's got such on their breath. I never did that before, but I do that now. Like when I'm at parties off duty and I'm like, oh, they've been drinking. Oh, I can see their eyes. You know, like I see these physical things because I've got the training to what to look for. It's very interesting, but you guys can use your senses too. Look at your kids' eyes, smell their breath, smell their clothing. They're going to smell like substances. That myth that, oh, if I drink vodka, they can't smell it, is a myth. You can smell alcohol no matter what. Eyes, dilated pupils will be kids that are on alcohol. If you're concerned about other substances like marijuana, their pupils are going to be more pinpointed. And they're definitely going to be slow to react. Our bodies slow down with alcohol. It's a depressant. So the pupils may not move as fast. So they're going to be dilated. And then you're going to obviously look for the bloodshot eyes. We call that like glassy bloodshot eyes in the police world. And then their behavior, right? If your kid comes home and they're crazy, obnoxious and loud, and that's not their normal behavior, then you can probably assume that they did use some kind of substance when they were out. If they're stumbling, if they're making frequent trips to the bathroom. My brother will probably kill me for saying this, but I remember a situation when I was a kid and my brother was older than me, and there was that exact same situation. My parents were sleeping and they kept hearing him go to the bathroom. We're like, what is that kid doing? And finally, they figured out that he was sick multiple times throwing up in the bathroom. So they realized he'd come home inebriated and they handled things appropriately. And then, you know, this is a personal choice for parenting, but I think in today's world, with the amount of access that kids have, the phones, the amount of things that they can have access to, I really don't think kids get much privacy anymore. So if you are concerned, if you are seeing some of those signs in their behavior, you've smelled it on their breath, I really do think it's important that you start looking in their spaces. Check their bags, check their closets, check their drawers. You are most likely going to see some kind of signs of substance use, whether it's alcohol, marijuana, heaven forbid anything else. But as a parenting tactic, you pay for everything there. You are they're staying in your home, and it's your responsibility, right, to make sure that they're okay and that they're safe. So I definitely recommend that you take that on as a parenting strategy and check their spaces. People say this, I've heard this a lot from people, I'd rather they just drink at home and they practice, right? They practice under my control, under my care. I can show them, this is how much you can drink, etc. That is not a good idea. Research is very clear. I want to be very clear on that. The research is very clear that this is not a good idea. It has the opposite effect. Those kids that are taught to drink at home actually start escalating drinking quicker. They are drinking more heavily outside of the home when they go on to college, etc. And then, just for your own knowledge, we have laws in the city and the state of Illinois about hosting. You can't be hosting underage drinking at your home or anywhere else. So if someone were to get sick, maybe a friend was talking about it, you as a parent or an adult could be charged with the hosting. Wow, you don't want to do that. Sure. Making your home safe. We know through these surveys that we look at that kids are, they have easy access to alcohol. If you look at, this is the data from the Monitoring the Future survey. And when they asked the 8th, 10th, and 12th graders about their availability of alcohol, and this is the percentage of them, it's kind of hard to see, but for the 12th graders, it's just under 80% say it's fairly easy or easy to get access. Now, clearly you can see that those last dots are lower because that's during the pandemic. I am sure access and availability got lowered because kids who were home with their parents, so that availability isn't that good because parents are there. And then they're not seeing their friends. So that's a good thing. Again, pandemic, one positive out of the pandemic. Securing alcohol at home, I think this is a good idea. If you do have an alcohol cabinet, you can then lock the whole cabinet. But if you just have a couple bottles of wine or liquor in your home, and you can buy these devices on Amazon. Just look for bottle locks. There's all different types on there. It'll give you some peace of mind if you're out and about, that the bottles are safe if you're leaving your kids at home. If you do plan to go out and leave your kids at home, know that it's not a bad idea to ask a neighbor or a friend to just check in on them. Like if you're going to be gone all evening, so and make that even like now when you're leaving people leave their kids home alone at all different ages. So it just kind of, you can set the tone, like, just, just make sure you're okay. So-and-so's going to be stopping in to check on you. It kind of gives the kids that heads up, like, hey, better not have anybody over, because you're not going to give them the time that they're going to stop in. It's going to be like, they may stop in, they may not. And, maybe they do, maybe they don't, but just keep the kids guessing. I highly recommend that. And then again, modeling good behavior, right? We want to do what we want our kids to do, is what we want to be showing at home. So be clear on your messaging. They are listening to you. They are paying attention to what's going on. And if you're talking this on one side of your mouth to them, but you're not playing or, acting the way you want them to act on this side, you're drinking and driving with them in the car. I don't think that's going to build much trust with your kids. They're going to say, well, you do it, why can't I do it, right? So be very clear in your behavior. They are watching what you're doing. This is a really big point about avoiding talking about using alcohol because you're stressed. Oh, I had a hard day at work. I'm just going to have this glass of wine because I need to de-stress from work today. Because it's sending a very clear message to kids that, oh, if I'm stressed, I need to drink alcohol. So make it about, oh, I'm so stressed. I came home from work today. Can you go for a walk with me? Let's go burn off some steam. Let's listen to some music. Let's binge some crazy Netflix show, whatever. Make it a positive experience. Don't talk about using alcohol when you're not feeling good or when you're stressed out, because then they're gonna correlate those things. And same thing in that modeling, CTAD put together this amazing flyer about, we should be talking about our social events at home, our family parties, and making them alcohol-free. They don't always have to have alcohol there. So if you're one of those families that there's alcohol at every family party, you're sending that message to kids that we can only have fun if there's alcohol available. So maybe one of the parties it's alcohol-free and we're doing all these fun festive drinks, right? We're making it fun. Kids can join in on making the drinks. Just definitely something to think about, because again, they're modeling your behavior growing up around parties. And so I think that the message is pretty clear that you need to be talking to your kids about underage drinking. They are going to hear your message. They are going to listen to you if it's a repetitive conversation that you're having. But if they aren't listening to you and your child gets caught by us, or usually the local jurisdictions are pretty similar, these are what that could happen when kids are caught with underage drinking. So we've got the city ordinance, and there's also clearly the state law about possession of or consumption of alcohol by a minor. It's funny because I always talk to the kids in the classroom about possessing, that it's illegal for kids to drive a car with alcohol in it. And they're all like, well, what if my dad buys the beer and I forget and it's in the trunk? And I'm like, okay, you know, like police officers are pretty smart. They know what they're doing. They can call your parents and verify. But please don't put your kid in that position, right? Like, don't buy alcohol at Jewel and come home and be like, yeah, here, you can go take the car. Please take all the alcohol out of the car if you're doing that, so that kids aren't driving around with alcohol in their car. The zero tolerance, I think that's important for kids to understand that any amount of alcohol is illegal. So even if they've had just a couple sips, they haven't even drank, they had half a beer and that's what they say, oh, I just had a sip. They could get a zero tolerance ticket, which actually takes their license away until they're 18. So that's definitely probably something that doesn't want to happen. What happens if they do get a ticket for underage drinking? So we have a couple processes here in town. We have what we call administrative court. So we can write an admin ticket. Kids can go to our admin court. The fine starts at $250. And even just to be at the admin hearing, you have to pay another $50 to be there. So now you're at $300. And then our judges, our hearing officers, generally, I would say 99% of the time when kids are guilty of this offense, they assign them to take a substance abuse class up at CLC, and that costs another $50. So parents, do not pay this for these kids. I want this coming out of their allowance money, their holiday money, whatever, their birthday money. Most annoying thing I see is when we're at these hearings and then the parents are up there paying the bill. You know, like your kids are making these decisions. If this is happening to them, make sure that they know that they're out $350. It's a big ticket item. If it was like a repetitive thing, we might just then refer the kid to juvenile court because clearly they're having some substance issues, and then they can mandate some counseling. Again, I talked about the hosting the underage drinking party. This goes not only for adults, but for kids as well. So if your kid, you guys go out, you and the adults in the household go out to dinner, and the kids decide that they're gonna have some friends over, and you don't know about it, you know, the kids could then be cited for hosting an underage drinking party as well. And that fine starts at $500. That's a hefty one. And then you got your $50 court fee. And just recognizing that if anybody were to host an alcohol party for underage kids and there's an injury or a death, that is a class 4 felony and it could be up to 3 years in jail. I don't know if anybody paying attention remembers, but probably about, it had been 10 years ago, this happened in a family in Deerfield where kids were having a holiday party. It was college kids, like young college kids, 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds, home from college, and the family was supposed to be taking car keys, but kids got out anyways, and they left to pick up other kids, and on the way back, they got in a really bad car accident. One or two, do you remember that case? A couple kids, 1 or 2 kids died, and that father got charged with hosting and had to serve time. He did like a time release up in Clay County, so it definitely has happened. It's a pretty serious thing. This, of all statutes, of all things I want you to talk to your kids about, this is the most important. And this, when I talk to kids in the classroom, this is what I tell them. If you haven't listened to anything that I've said today, please pay attention right now, because to me, this is the most important statute out there. There's a similar one for drugs called like a Good Samaritan statute, but this is specifically about alcohol. And basically what it is, it's giving kids immunity if we have that binge drinking situation happen and a kid has passed out. I tell kids that's a medical emergency. And you should be talking about that to your kids too, that if they do come across a kid that they can't wake up, even if the kid is moaning or groaning, but if they can't wake them up and have a conversation with them, it is a medical emergency. They don't know where their BAC, where their blood alcohol content is at, and if it's still rising. That level between passing out and death is pretty close, and depending on the person and the body and how much experience they've had with alcohol, if they pass out, they're gonna die soon if that level is still going up. Kids need to know that they can call 911 and they're not gonna get arrested. The kid they're calling for is not gonna get arrested. But there's a caveat to it, right? Shall not apply to more than 3 people acting together. So I tell the kids, if they're at a party, you wanna be the kid calling 911 because you wanna be the one of those 3 that's acting together to help save someone else. So please talk to your kids about this statute so that they know, because unfortunately we know their brains are not necessarily making the best decisions. They're very egocentric where they're only worried about themselves. And so they're not necessarily going to be reaching out and trying to help people because they don't want to get in trouble. They don't want to get their friends in trouble, right? That's like a big thing amongst kids. This statute will help protect them so that they're not getting anybody in trouble. They're saving a life, right? That's what we want them to do. That's the majority of the information I've got for you. It's about remembering you guys are the #1 influence in their lives. Keep talking to your kids. You are going to make a difference, but you have to keep those conversations going. And they may get annoyed with you, and that's okay. You're going to still bring it up the next week when you're in the car driving somewhere. Keep showing up. They're still growing up. That's Stephanie's Lake County line. I love it. I think it's really important that you recognize that they still need you at all stages. You know, I'm old, but I still tell my parents I need them. I want them there. So just know these middle schoolers, these high schoolers, they want to be with you. They want to connect with you. And if you're keeping the judgment low and the interest high, you're going to make those connections and they're going to recognize that this is not something that you approve of. And hopefully that underage drinking will, you know, stay away until they can make that choice illegally and have be the age, right? So that's all the information I have for you, but thank you for tuning in and thanks for coming.
I just said one thing, you may have done this. Have you shared what you've done this year?
Not yet.
Oh, okay.
So I will actually come stand up there.
Yeah.
So they can see me.
For sure.
So for the health department, I partner with Northwood and Edgewood, both schools, doing a student alcohol or underage drinking prevention campaign. So throughout the year, so it's been about 9 months, we started this, we've done it for 2-3 years.
Mm-hmm.
We share new materials every month with the students. They see the posters around the school. We do activities roughly every 3 months. In the fall, Officer Hyndman and I did a week of different substances, marijuana and alcohol activities. So we did a plinko, we did bingo, we did a presentation, we did ways and activities for the students to get involved. And also the past 3 years, I have gone into the health and PE classes, teaching a curriculum called Too Good for Drugs. So they've learned about building life skills and different substances, as well as what Officer Hyndman has done. And also this presentation that Officer Hyndman is doing goes with our parent campaign as well. The Keep Showing Up, They're Still Growing Up. We have posters around the community. The schools send emails, and there's a website as well. So that is the extent of what I do with the schools on alcohol and drug prevention. So thank you, Melissa, for asking that. Someone asked if there was a way to monitor, like a monitoring app that you would recommend for monitoring text messages.
Oh, yeah. So there's some Bark is a really good, we will provide that. We can definitely provide that in the resources. But I know offhand Bark is really good. I think it's just bark.org maybe. A lot of the monitoring softwares, it's good to compare. I had recently sent out was it to you guys? I think I might have sent it to Dr. Martinez about that you could provide to all the parents, like a comparison of, I'll have to look. I know I recently did that. So I will definitely provide that with the other resources that we're going to provide out there. If you did just like a Google search of cell phone monitoring software, there's going to be a bunch, but just like look for a good review that's not tied to like selling something. That's what I would do. But I know Bark is on there usually. And then there's sometimes within your own devices or cellular plans, definitely talk to those people because sometimes it's already built into Verizon or AT&T. They may have something that you can use. So talk to them, but I will put out some of the services that I've heard about that are helpful. There's usually a fee. Either it's annually or monthly, and the fees depend on what kind of services they provide. So that's something you just have to kind of do the comparison.
So another question came up about that there's a lot about students using marijuana, gummies, et cetera, and parents want to know like what signs they can look for. And I think you talked about it, but you might want to talk a little more about what they can.
So for marijuana intoxication, obviously you're going to see droopier eyes. You're going to see like people being more relaxed, more of the pinpoint kind of pupils. Long term, if you suspect your child is using marijuana, you're going to start seeing behavioral changes in their grades are going to fall. That's for alcohol too, but grades will start falling because it really does start affecting their learning and memory and the motivation factor. So it really starts, if these are people that are using on a regular basis, they're not going to be motivated to really do the same things that they were doing. So if they're involved in sports, they're not going to be going to sports. They're going to, blow things off. They're going to try to be holed up in their bedroom away from you. That's probably one of the things that you're going to see. So I can definitely put together, we've got some other fact sheets through CTAB. So along with the alcohol ones, we can just throw the marijuana ones in there as well. So you have all that information. Most importantly, I think if you suspect your child is using, the best resource you have is your pediatrician. Please talk to your pediatricians. At their annual physical, talk to your pediatrician about doing the urine tests, blood tests, and asking them, can you test my child for drugs? Can you test them for whatever's in their body? I don't know what their policies generally are for that, but definitely something to bring up with your pediatrician and they're concerned for their health. That's who I would be talking to about that for sure.
And you just answered the next question of, do you recommend that they test their kids for alcohol and drugs?
So I recommend going through like a pediatrician's office. I was just reading something earlier today. I think the feelings are mixed. So like I've heard the camp of make sure that you're starting that early as a process, like that kids know what your expectations are, and that when you this is before they're even using, hopefully, but you can say, we don't agree. This is how we are going to make sure you're safe is by doing these tests. And then kids have that expectation. They know it can act as a deterrent. Well, I don't want my parents testing me. So sometimes that can it can give kids the out with friends. I can't do that because my parents are going to test me, right? So there's that camp. But then there's also some research out there that talks about, and I saw it briefly earlier today, but I didn't click on it, so I will get back on that. But there was this other camp that was saying this is why the experts say drug testing at home is not recommended. So I have to look into that, but I can forward that to you. I do think if you're going to be doing it, just try to stick with the pediatrician. They know what to look for. They're going to know what to help tell you to look for. And additionally, if your child is on any kind of substances, plus they have all the legitimate tests that, I don't know if the at-home ones are as reliable. And then you've got these false positives, and you're accusing your kid of doing something they didn't do. So I could see where it's kind of like both sides, but. If you're going to do it, I would recommend a pediatrician's office or lab or whatever.
That's it. Does anyone else on Zoom have questions? Anyone here have questions?
Yeah.
My name is Catherine Spencer. I work for CTAD that makes some of the fact sheets that Amy shared. And just so you know, those were actually created by parents, many of them. So parents in our community for our community. So they're very unique for us. But I did want to share, we do a lot of surveying as well at the high school level. And one of the things we did is we asked parents, how much are you talking to your kids about drug and alcohol? And then we looked at kids that were surveyed, how often they say parents are talking to them about drugs and alcohol. And guess what? Parents said they were talking to their kids a lot, and kids were like, oh, like once a year, twice a year. So, and my point is not that the parents are lying or the kids are lying. The point is you have to have all these little conversations for it to like sink in with the kids.
Yeah, I think if your kid is not saying, oh my God, mom, again about the drinking, I know, if they're not doing that, then you're not doing enough. So remember that it's about annoying, our kids. That's what our jobs are, right? We annoy our kids. We are not our kid's friend. We are our kid's parent. So please be that annoying parent that you have to be. I always tell parents when I'm talking to them, if your kid doesn't like you, or if your kid likes you, I should say, you're not doing the right job, right? Like they should not like you during these years because you're annoying them, you're discussing about stuff, you got rules in place that they don't agree with. Stick to your guns, guys. You can do it. I know it's hard. The phones are hard. All of it's hard, but just know that it will get better. And if you stick to your guns, you're going to grow really good humans that are going to make a difference in the world.
Yeah, and I think you said this at another event, but and I've tried it now, where I'll mention Officer Hyndman. I'll say, oh, I heard Officer Hyndman say, and I think, to your point that you had made, there is a connection.
Yeah.
Oh, they're all talking about
right.
it.
It takes a village, right?
And
it's
then,
about coming together.
I think then it kind of builds trust in both you and the parent.
Yeah.
Well, they're aligned.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I think definitely you can use me anytime and say, well, Officer Hyndman says this. Did you hear this at school? And, I haven't talked to every health class in this district, so definitely check out the resources that we're going to send you. But if you want me to specifically talk to, have a talk with you and your kid at a stay-at-home thing, at home, I'm more than happy to have those conversations. Or if you want to do an email chain with me and your kid about asking questions and get clarified information, because they're like, you don't know what you're talking about now. I'd be more than happy to answer questions, provide resources. But the documents that we're going to share with you are some amazing information. Catherine and her team at CTAD do such a great job with putting this information together based on research and evidence. It's all backed up with science. So really, and they're very visually nice. So you can look at them with the kid and just kind of go through it. I think it's a really good starting point for these conversations. But have the conversations. We have to have these conversations. It's not even a when, if, it's when, or it's just do it. Just do these conversations. Number one deterrent.
Another thing I want to share is that I couldn't sort of believe this was coming out of my mouth, but I was with a parent and our boys were all together and the parent was like, they were looking for a house to hang out at. And the parent said to me well, I don't know, what do you think? Should I let them hang out at my house? What do you think about that? And I found myself saying, well, do you have an open bar? Do you have an open liquor? I mean, and it felt a little uncomfortable, but I think it was all of this awareness that was helping me, even with other parents, that's one way to spread.
For sure.
Awareness too is to ask questions.
Yep.
And not to be afraid to say, well, do you have, and I even said, do you have any other substances that might be around,
Yeah.
And I know that can be awkward, but I think the more we do it, the less awkward it can be.
For sure. Definitely. I like that a lot. That's really good.
Yeah. I think that the stigma of asking needs to be removed.
Right.
Agreed.
A 13-year-old can't go to Walgreens and buy alcohol. It's in your cabinet at home.
Right. And how often are we having 13-year-olds at parties and you as a parent are like, oh, they're having, I don't want to be the annoying parent that comes downstairs. Go downstairs, guys, go downstairs. I'm giving you permission. You can even say, Officer Hyndman told me to come down. I'm doing a safety check, whatever words you want to use. Just be the annoying parent. It's about their safety. It's about their well-being, right? There's no questions about it. It's just, you're not doing it to annoy them. You're doing that to make sure that everybody's safe.
And ask questions. Last week, and a friend of mine, her daughter asked if I would, she must have asked it fast because I said yes, and I heard prom, so I thought she wanted me like to go and see them get dressed up at the prom. It was to sponsor something, to be a sponsor. I didn't ask enough questions until I realized it was to actually go and probably watch them while they were at their prom and brought in, who knows? And had I not asked more questions, I would have probably set myself up for that. Because I didn't put my mind there because I just thought, oh, how cute, I get to see them on a prom.
Right.
No, they needed adults to probably
Sponsor it.
sponsor it. When I
Chaperone.
learned what the sponsoring meant, I'm like, absolutely not. I'm not gonna be anywhere near a bunch of kids drinking. I don't want anything to do with that information.
Right.
So you have to ask questions. I learned by not. You think I would know better, but no.
Yeah. Ask the questions for sure.
Yeah, I was just gonna add to just about locking up alcohol, because I think it's something where you've had these elementary kids, you don't worry about it, and as they get older, it's like, oh yeah, we gotta start thinking about that. But, you know, we kind of positioned it with our kids, I have 2 high schoolers and 1 middle schooler, that, I mean, we're doing this so that they're not in an awkward position too, like, we
Right.
don't have alcohol in the house, so that, you know, if kids are there and they're like, oh, let's see if you have any alcohol here, it's just not there.
Right.
So, or if it's locked up, they're not in a position where they're saying, no, we can't get in it. Well, it's locked up, they can't get in it. So you're really making it easier
Right.
for your kids
For
by
sure.
locking it up so they're not in a position to have to be the one to say no. You know, just a no for them. And with like, when you have people and kids in the basement, like bring down goodies. Bring, oh,
Right.
does anybody need a drink, a soda? Let me go get some.
Yeah.
Don't have them down there and make them, like, we don't have a bathroom in our basement, so they have to come upstairs to go to the bathroom.
Right. I know everyone wants to be the pool parent, but unfortunately, I think being the pool parent leads to some undesirable behaviors. And, you know, we know kids are gonna get away with what they wanna get away with. So it's our job to make it harder. Hopefully some of the things I talked about today will make it easier for you guys to help with prevention.
I liked your videos. That way they hear it from someone else and
Right.
not just from the same.
Right,
Person.
yeah. And they're cartoons, so I mean, they're fine. They're fine.
All right. Well,
Thank
thank
you.
you.
All right, you're welcome, guys.
Thank you everyone for joining. If you have any questions, we'll send an email and you can respond to that email with follow-up questions as well.
Right. And even if you're watching on the replay, just, you know, my email will be in the information for you guys to connect with.
Thank you.